Hi viewers, and welcome to the channel, and welcome to the mini-series for Python for beginners from a FreeCAD perspective. We're on episode 8 and we're going to be looking into dictionaries. The reason why we're looking into the dictionaries is because we need to store away each of the objects on screen and say if they're in a clash or a collision with the other selected objects that we have, and we need a way to store those away so we can update the screen much more efficiently and also move to a different way of updating the screen. So at the moment we're colouring the objects, and we're going to be using a data structure like this to say whether they're in collision or not. We're then going to move in future videos to this type of data structure. If you've been following along, you know we're detecting the faces that we're colliding with. Well, we can use this, and we're going to use this in the future because we're going to colour the individual faces. So this is what we're going to be moving to in the future. And we're going to end up with something like this. We have got the sides that are not in collision, coloured in green, and the sides that are in collision, coloured in red. And you can see we've got some output down here showing the dictionary being used and it being processed there to detect the collisions. That's coming up in a few videos time. So this is what we're moving towards. This video we're just getting that dictionary in place and starting to use it and starting to understand the dictionary. So I hope you're enjoying this mini-series. Remember to look out for the normal 3D modelling and animation tutorials throughout the week. Currently got the Curves mini-series running. We'll be doing more on that and also more on FreeCAD as a whole. So let's take a look at this and carry on with our programming. If you like this video, please hit a like and also subscribe to the channel. I also have a Ko-Fi site where you can actually donate to my contributions to the community, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. So we have our code in front of us here, and from our last lesson we looked at functions and refactoring and also the while loop. So this while loop now allows us to take the objects on screen, select them, and it will automatically detect if they are in collision. We're going to change this now because at the moment we have some code in here that goes through and changes everything you've selected to green first. It then goes through another for loop, which is a nested for, and changes the ones that have collided to red. Now this is a bit wasteful at the moment because what's happening is that we change them to green and then we change the collided ones to red, and then we go around again and do the same. Now if we had multiple objects, at the moment we've only got 3 objects in there, that's going to slow down the process and it will start to flicker. So we'll get the green and then red. At the moment it's going so quickly that we can't see it, but the more objects we get on there and the more complex the models are, the more it will start to flicker. So we need to do this last. So we need to keep them coloured, and the very last thing we need to do is go through all the objects and change their colour. Rather than change them to 1, just change them to the colour they should be, whether they're in collision or not. So we've got to actually store away whether they're in collision or not, and then do the colour changing last of all. Now I'm going to be doing this with something called a dictionary. So I'm going to show you what a dictionary is, and I'll show you the reasons why we're going to be using this. Now a dictionary is a collection. I'm going to use a variable called myd, and we're going to equal that to open and close braces, like so. So we've got that defined now. myd equals open and close brace. So I'll type in myd. Use whatever variable you want. You can see there's nothing in there at the moment. Now, a dictionary is a key value pair. So we can actually place something in there by going myd. In there we use open square bracket and either a single or double quote, whatever you've chosen. And you place in there a key. So for instance, if I did box 1 in there, which is the ID of the box, the name of the box, then I can close the square bracket, use an equal, and we can set that one to whatever we want. So we could set it to a string value or a Boolean value, whatever you want in there. And what I'm going to do is type in myd. Let's see what we got in there. And as you can see, in braces we've got box 1 followed by t's. So this part is your index or your key, and this part is your data or your value. So it's a key value pair, and we can have multiples in here. So my D, and I'm going to put in here box 3. I'm going to equal that one to true. So I've changed the type as well in there. So if I type in my D now, you'll see that we've got box 1, which equals TT, and box 3, which equals true. So we're building our collection of data. This collection is editable, it's changeable, and it's indexed. So it's got an index in here of these key value pairs. Depending on what version of Python that your FreeCAD is running upon, it's either ordered or unordered, which means when they get placed in, if it's ordered, it gets placed in that order as it goes in. So if we go through the first item on the list, it will always be that one. You can't have duplicates in there because they're key value pairs. So the key is always related to one piece of data. This data item doesn't have to be a single value. So it can be a collection, say a tuple, list, doesn't matter what you put in there. It will always be that type that you've added. So for instance, my D, and we'll add another box, box 2, and we'll equal that to a list. So I've opened a square bracket in there, and we're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, and close that square bracket. So now my D, and we'll look in there. You can see we've got those data items in there. This means that we can actually embed a dictionary within a dictionary. So for instance, here, this box 2, it's got box 2. This part here is a list at the moment. If we did this as a dictionary, placed a dictionary in there with key value pairs, then we can access both of those. So we can access one and then get the data from that and then use that again, accessing that by key value pairs. To access it, we just need to do my D, open the square bracket, and then select our index. So for instance, the last one we put in was box 2. Let's use that index. So box 2. And you can see when that comes back, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 with my D box 2. So how's this going to help us? Well, our index, we're going to be connecting that to the name. And the value of this, we're going to set as either a true or false. We could even do it to the tuple, the red, green, blue tuple, if we so desire. Also, it's going to help us in the future videos. So very soon, we're going to change this up a bit. So rather than coloring the box green when it hasn't collided or red when it has, so at the moment these two are green because we haven't actually run the macro yet. Let's select something. So we selected all of them. So we selected the cylinder, the cube, and the body. Come over to the macros, macro, execute macro. So that's running, and we need to check that we haven't got anything in the comment. Let's go into the comment and macro, execute macro. So that's running now. Got no selection there. Click. We can see that one's okay, and we need the body. There we go, those two. So those are in collision. So we can see those are running, and we've got them all colored red when they collided. I want to get to the point where we've got this side green, this side red, this side red, this side green. So we can tell which faces have collided, and the same over here as well. And that's what we're actually moving towards. And that will be over these two videos. But first we need to get some kind of data element in there to actually record what's been collided with, and deal with that after, so we're just updating all in one place. So let's clear that and go back to our MyD, our dictionary, hit enter. I've got all those in there. If we want to change something in here, we just select the index, so MyD, and then come into, say, box 1, which at the moment is TT, box 1, and I'm going to change that to a tuple, 1, 2, 3. Hit enter. Then if I did MyD again, hit enter, we can see now box 1 is 1, 2, 3. So that's changed there. So that's how you change a value in there. We can clear values, we can amend values, we can delete values, but we'll get into that a bit later. So let's start to get this into our code. So I'm just going to shrink this down a bit. Also, we're going to stop the macro. So come over to the FreeCAD. And because this is going to check if the comment is blank, well, it's always blank, it's going to go round and round and run this macro. So I'm just going to place in here a G or something like that, and that's stopped it. So let's have a look what we got and move up to the top. The first thing we need to do is define our dictionary. So I'm going to define it at the very top so it's available to everywhere. So I'm going to call it dictionary and then their objects, and open and close the curly brackets or the braces. So we've got a dictionary of objects that we're going to be using. So we can actually drop out everything that changes the color. So for instance, this one here, we don't need that anymore. So we can get rid of that because we'll be going through our dictionary and coloring those afterwards. So this whole process objects is just basically filling that dictionary values. So we've got the full actor in selection, and then we go into for obstacle in selection. So we're checking the actor against the obstacles to make sure they're not the same. If they are, we continue around. If they're not, then we get the approximity and make sure that we take the faces from that collision, place them in the actor faces and the obstacle faces. So that's the spread operator there. If we've got something in those, then we start our coloring. So in here, this is where we want to change our dictionary and add those items to the dictionary. So in here, we're going to be using the name as the key. So instead of change shape color, red, we're going to change this to dictionary, objects, and then we're going to use the actor name as the key and equal that to true. So that says that that's in collision. That'll store all that away in dictionary objects against the key actor name. So for instance, like box 1, box 2, cylinder 1, cylinder 2, etc. So we're taking that from the actor, the name for the actor, and setting that to true. We're also going to do the same with the obstacle. So I'm just going to copy that and place it down here. And we're going to take the obstacle name, this one here, and place that where it's got actor name. Just going to replace that there with obstacle name. So we're setting those to true. But the only thing is, because we've moved the green, then they're not actually set to false, to make sure that the color's been reset first. So we've got to think about that. Now, if we look at a loop, what we're doing is going in and saying we're taking the actor and detecting if the actor is collided with any obstacles. Then we're setting both of them to true. Really, we only need to do that with one of them. We need to do that with an actor. Every obstacle in there is being checked against all the obstacles to see if they've collided. So we don't need to change the obstacle because we're seeing if the actor's collided and then we color it. So everything will be checked to see if it's in collision and colored accordingly. So we can take that out and just deal with the actor. But we still need to set that actor to false at the beginning, because at the moment, if it's not collided, then we don't do anything with that value. We don't save away that value to say it's not collided. So that actor could be in collision when the while loop runs the first time. The second time, it may not be, but nothing gets written away. So let's take this, and I'm going to make a copy of it, and I'm going to come up to my for actor in selection. And here, we're going to set that to false. Just paste that in there and set that to false. That means when we check the actor, we come in, pick up the actor, we automatically set it to false first time, and then we check to see if it's in collision. If it is in collision, then we set it to true. But we haven't done any color changes here, so we won't get any flicker. So at the moment, we're not actually changing any color, so we've got to do that. So we're doing that last. So for that, we're going to actually go through each of those elements in that dictionary and color them depending if it's true or false. So if it's true, it's been in collision, so we colour that as red. If it's false, it hasn't been in collision, so we colour that as green. For that, I'm going to create another function. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to use the def command, and we're going to define a function name. I'm going to call it color objects, open and close the brackets, because it doesn't need anything. Colon, hit enter and tab in. Let's give it a new line as well, so we're pushing that while down, so we can concentrate on what goes in here. So I want to go through that collection, that dictionary, one by one. So I'm going to iterate through that dictionary. So I'm going to use for, and it's the same. It's for your variable in your collection. So I'm going to call my variable, my obj. I'm going to say in the dictionary objects. Hit enter and tab in. So what I'm saying is that everything in the dictionary objects, let's put a D on the front there because that wouldn't work otherwise. So everything in this dictionary objects, this dictionary object collection, each time we go through there, we're going to assign the next one to my object. So the first time it goes in there, if it takes the first one, assigns it to my object, and then we can use that. So we're looking my D down here, which I've still got here. First time in, it will pick up box 1 and then 1, 2, 3 if we was using this. So box 1 is the key and 1, 2, 3 is the value. Let's try this down here. So I'm going to do for my obj in my D colon, hit enter, put the 3 dots in there, so it's asking for more, so I'll tab in. I'm going to print my obj. Hit enter again, and you can see what's happened. It's come in, and the value is box 1, box 3, box 2. So that's great. So we've got those, but it's just showing that index there. So all it's done is pulled in the actual index or the key to those, which is fine. So that's changed for my object to for my key. This makes it descriptive and we know what it is. Now, how do we check to see if something's true or false in there? If I tab in, so we're tabbing into the for, because this is a loop. I'm going to use if, and we need to use the dictionary objects, and we need to pass it a key. So before, remember, we came in and said my D, and then square brackets, open the quotes, and box 1, close the quotes, close the square brackets. If we hit enter, we get the value back. So we've got to replicate that in our code. Well, we've got our collection, my D, our dictionary, which is dictionary objects. So in square brackets, we need to place a key in there. We're grabbing the key here, my key. So this is where we actually pull in the keys. So my key, close the square bracket. And we want to check whether that's either true or false. I'm going to go with false, so equals, and then false, colon. So we're saying if that key, when it's picked up, whatever's in my key, and this is pulling back the value, so like down here it pulls back the value, equals false, and then we do something in here. And this is where we change the shade color. So it's false, it's not in collision, so we change it to green. So change shade color, and in brackets there we need to pass the object name, because when we run this, if we come out to change shade color green there, I'll place green on here as well, forgot about that. So now we've got that, we need to pass in the name. So if we come up to change shade color, we pass in the name, and it goes to change shade color, passes the name through, and get object name. So we just need the name there, which we're storing away as the key, because we're coming in and saying dictionary objects at a dot name equals true, or dictionary objects at a dot name equals false. So we can use that in here and just type in my key, because that's the object name. That'll change its color. Come into here, use an else, colon on the end, enter, and then tab into that else. Now, if it's not false, it's going to be true. So it's going to say they are actually in collision. So we're going to change the shade color for that key which is also the object name, to red. So that's our function defined. It won't run at the moment because we're not actually calling it anywhere. So we need to call it somewhere. So if we come up and have a look at our main process objects, you can see if there's a selection, then we're coming in here, we're coming into the for, and we're defining all the trues and falses in that dictionary object, picking them up, saying this should be this color and this should be that color. So what we want to do is, after we've been through looping through them all, is, let's take that line out and bring that up, is to actually call this. If we look at the if, we can see we have a selection there. So this is the best place to actually call it, but we need to do it after this for is run. So I'm going to come into the for, hit enter, and tab over. Now I want to make sure that I'm in line with the beginning of that for. So it's not inside the for loop, but it is inside this if statement. So that means it will run this for loop and then it get down to here and do the color changes. I'm going to call the color objects in here and open the close brackets. So that'll run that and then drop down to color objects, which is define color objects down here. Now, best practices is to take this and define it above from where we're calling it. Because at the moment, look down here, comes down here, calls color objects, but then it drops down here. So we'll cut that and place it above. So now we've got our code nicely in line. So this should work now. So save it and give it a go. At the moment, we haven't got anything selected. Let's clear this. And also clear the comment. So we've got something in the comment at the moment. Let's get rid of that. Macro, execute macro. Got no errors. It's running there. So if I click this object, it's fine. Click this one. And you see it's come up in an error here. So it's saying dictionary objects is not defined. So if we look down here, we can see this error here. So we can actually look to see to debug this. We're coming in line 36, process objects. So it's running that. Line 24 in process objects. Dictionary objects at dot name equals false. And it can't find the dictionary objects, saying it's not defined. So let's have a look, see what we've done. So we've got the process objects. Looking down, line 24, dictionary objects. Let's have a look. You can see that I've misnamed this dictionary objects, so I've missed out the C. And all these look fine here. Dictionary objects. Dictionary objects. So if you get stuck, you need to have a look at your report view. If any errors come up, you can see what line they're on. And just follow this through. So this is basically a trace back. So this trace backs through your code to find out where the problem lies. It will tell you what line it is on, and it'll give you some kind of description of the problem. If you have something called not defined, then you've probably misnamed it, or it's out of the variable scope. So remember we were saying about variable scoping before? You have to be aware of that. This is where we start to get these errors. This was just a basic rename because I mistyped the actual variable. Let's clear this and run that again. So macro, execute macro, and we've got another problem. So color objects is not defined. So if we come down, line 31 in the process objects, we're down, We've got the color objects there. Now let's have a look what we've named the define. So we've got missed out the C again. It's almost like I've done this on purpose. There we go. So we can see through the trace back what problems have been caused. Let's clear that. And that seems to run now. Let's go back. And those two are green. Let's click, and click the body. Let's turn green. So click the cube, control click the body, and those two have turned red. So we can see that working now. So in our next video, we're going to move towards this data structure. This will allow us to detect and record the faces that have been in collision, and also move towards this type of display where we're showing those faces in red and the faces that aren't collided in green. That'll be up next Sunday, so throughout the week look out for the modelling and animation tutorials on my channel. I'll still be doing those, and on Sunday I will be doing some Python work. At the moment we've got this beginner series running. It doesn't finish at the end of this project. We'll be moving on through more beginner series and then into intermediate and so forth, and just keep that series running with additional Python examples and tutorials that are thrown in just for good measure and when I find something fun to do. Thank you for all the subscribers and people that have supported me, and I'll see you again shortly. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to my site, and also I have a Ko-Fi site where you can actually donate a few pence or a few pounds, dollars, or whatever your currency is, and that's at ko-fi.com/mang0, and there you'll be able to help me fund my site, and all the money that I actually get from any funds will actually get pushed back into the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing. I'll see you next time.